Most people do not fail because they are untalented. They fail because they get bored too early. They want results, but they do not want repetition. They want confidence after one attempt, discipline after one decision, mastery after one good week, change after one emotional night. But that is not how transformation works. Your mind changes through repetition. Your body changes through repetition. Your habits change through repetition. Your identity changes through repetition. The things you admire in other people, their calm, their focus, their confidence, their skill, their success, were not built in one dramatic moment. They were built in the quiet, in the unseen, in the boring, in the repeated. Because repetition is what turns effort into instinct. It is what turns knowledge into behavior. And it is what turns possibility into reality. So if you feel stuck right now, if you feel like nothing is changing, if you are tempted to quit because the results are too slow, watch closely, because this might be the moment you stop chasing intensity and start respecting the power of repetition. We live in a world obsessed with breakthroughs. Everyone wants the big idea, the viral moment, the perfect strategy, the one decision that changes everything overnight. But the truth is, most breakthroughs are just repetitions that finally became visible. What people celebrate is the result. What they ignore is the rehearsal. They see the speaker on stage. They do not see the hundreds of times that person practiced alone. They see the athlete perform under pressure. They do not see the endless drills. They see the successful entrepreneur. They do not see the repeated failures, repeated adjustments, repeated discipline. That is the tragedy of modern ambition. People worship outcomes, but disrespect the process that creates them. And because repetition is not glamorous, people abandon it. They confuse boredom with uselessness. They confuse slowness with failure. They confuse not seeing immediate results with making no progress. But repetition does not always feel powerful while it is happening. Sometimes it feels small. Sometimes it feels invisible. Sometimes it feels like nothing is working. Yet that is exactly how real change looks in the beginning. A tree does not explode out of the ground in one day. It grows beneath the surface first, quietly, patiently, repeatedly. And your growth works the same way. The mind learns through repetition, not through random motivation. One thought repeated enough times becomes a belief. One action repeated enough times becomes a habit. One emotional response repeated enough times becomes a pattern. And one pattern repeated long enough becomes a personality. That is why repetition matters so much. Because every day, whether you realize it or not, you are already repeating something. You are repeating the way you speak to yourself. You are repeating the way you react to stress. You are repeating the way you avoid discomfort. You are repeating the excuses that protect your current identity. So the real question is not whether repetition is shaping your life. It already is. The real question is, what are you repeating? Are you repeating fear, doubt, delay, self-sabotage? Or are you repeating courage, discipline, calm, action, and focus? Because your future is not built by what you do once. It is built by what you do often. The mind becomes familiar with whatever you feed it repeatedly, and familiarity becomes normal. Normal becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. So if you want a new life, you do not always need a completely new self. You need new repetitions. The hardest part of repetition is this. In the beginning, it rarely feels rewarding. You repeat, and nothing seems to happen. You show up, and nobody notices. You practice, and you still feel average. You improve a little, but not enough to satisfy your expectations. That is where most people quit. Not because repetition does not work, but because repetition delays gratification. And modern people struggle with anything that does not reward them immediately.
We have become addicted to fast signals, fast likes, fast entertainment, fast answers, fast stimulation. But repetition belongs to another rhythm, a slower rhythm, a deeper rhythm, a rhythm that tests whether you are serious or just excited. Anyone can be motivated for one day. Anyone can feel inspired for one weekend. Anyone can start strong. But can you continue when it is no longer exciting? Can you continue when the results are invisible? Can you continue when nobody claps for you? Because that is where real separation happens, not at the start, at the repetition. There was a time when everything you do now used to feel difficult. Walking, reading, driving, speaking, typing, even understanding yourself. But repetition turned effort into ease. That is one of the greatest miracles of human development. What feels unnatural today can become normal tomorrow if you repeat it long enough. Confidence works like that. Discipline works like that. Communication works like that. Emotional control works like that. Leadership works like that. Success works like that. At first, it feels forced. Then it feels uncomfortable. Then it feels possible. Then it feels familiar. Then one day, it feels like you. That is why repetition is powerful, because it slowly removes resistance. The thing that once scared you becomes the thing you handle calmly. The thing that once overwhelmed you becomes the thing you manage with control. The thing that once felt impossible becomes part of your identity. And people will call it talent, when really, it was repetition. But repetition is not automatically good, because repetition does not judge, it only reinforces. If you repeat procrastination, you get better at avoiding. If you repeat anger, you get faster at reacting. If you repeat fear, you train your nervous system to expect danger. If you repeat excuses, you build a prison and call it personality. That is why awareness matters. You cannot change a pattern you refuse to notice. Many people say they want a different life, but every day they repeat the behaviors that recreate the same reality. The same conversations, the same emotional triggers, the same self-talk, the same escape routes, the same delay, the same surrender. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But life cannot change if your repetition does not change. So before you ask for better results, ask a better question. What am I rehearsing every day? Because whether it is helping you or hurting you, whatever you rehearse, you strengthen. If repetition shapes identity, then rebuilding your life does not start with waiting for a perfect moment. It starts with choosing your repetitions carefully. Choose one habit, one standard, one promise, one behavior you will repeat until it becomes part of who you are.
Not 10 things. Not a dramatic reinvention. One thing done consistently. Maybe it is speaking to yourself with more strength. Maybe it is waking up when you said you would. Maybe it is training even when you are not in the mood. Maybe it is breathing before reacting. Maybe it is sitting down every day to build what matters. Small repetitions seem weak to the impatient mind, but repeated daily, they become powerful. One sentence repeated can recondition your self-image. One disciplined action repeated can rebuild trust in yourself. One calm response repeated can change your relationships. 1 hour repeated daily can change your future. That is how people transform. Not by waiting to become someone new, but by repeating new behaviors until the old self has no power left. So stop asking whether the action is impressive. Ask whether it is repeatable. Because what is repeatable is what becomes real. And if this message speaks to you, then this is not the only idea you need. Because repetition is powerful, but repetition without awareness can still lead you in the wrong direction. That is why on this channel, we do not just talk about motivation. We talk about patterns, conditioning, identity, behavior, the deeper mechanisms behind why people stay stuck and how they change. So after this video, watch the next one that calls you most, the one about discipline, mindset, self-control, awareness, or the hidden patterns shaping your life. Because the more clearly you understand your inner programming, the more power you have to change what you repeat. And once you change what you repeat, you start changing everything. Never underestimate what repeated effort can do.
A single drop of water seems weak, but over time, it can shape stone. A single action seems small. A single promise seems insignificant. A single day of discipline seems forgettable. But when repeated, small things become powerful. That is how lives are built. That is how minds are changed. That is how weak versions of ourselves are replaced. Not in one dramatic leap, but in repeated decisions. So the next time you feel bored, the next time you feel unseen, the next time you feel like stopping because the progress is too slow, remember this: the repetition is working even before the result appears. Stay with it. Respect the process. Repeat what matters. Because repetition is not punishment. Repetition is the key. If this video gave you something real, subscribe. Leave a comment with the one behavior you are going to repeat starting today, and go straight to the next video on your screen. This is where change becomes identity.